Welcome, everybody. It is another Turbonomic Labs episode. So thank you very much for joining us. If you're watching live, it's always a pleasure to be able to host. We've had a really good response for folks that are catching it. Of course, the first few seconds tend to warm the stream up. We're going to be broadcasting over a lot of different ways in which you can take this content in. My name is Eric Wright. I'm going to be your host for Turbonomic Labs today. Today is Turbo Tuesdays. So the Turbonomic Tuesdays is really geared towards making sure that we can highlight very specific use cases in the Turbonomic platform ecosystem. This could include, of course, Turbonomic as our core application resource management platform, as well as Park My Cloud, which if you were with us last Tuesday, you got to see Chris Parlett do a fantastic demo of Park My Cloud, and also to show you how to unlock the secrets of the Rubik's Cube, which was very cool. So shout out to Chris. He's just such a great person to work with. And so we're super proud of all that we're doing with the Park My Cloud team. And of course, Sev1, if you're a fan of everything network, then there truly is no better than Sev1. So if you want to go to sev1.com as well, you'll see, of course, that they have now for nearly a year been a part of the Turbonomic family. I was super proud. Again, we're doing a lot of stuff, not just individually, but together. So this is a bit of a heads up that we've got a lot of really, really cool news that's coming up, which is thematic to what I'm going to show you today. Today is a way to sort of unveil how we're going to be deploying our Turbonomic next generation platform. But the neat thing is it's actually widely available right now. So we've been running I'll show you if you want, we'll flip over to the screen here. And what we've got is you can actually go today and you can download and deploy. And I'll talk about why this is an important sort of method in which we're doing this. So Turbonomic, our core platform is application resource management. So we call it ARM. So the Turbonomic ARM platform comes in what we call our 6 release, or is often called Classic. And this is because it's a traditional monolithic virtual machine deployment. You can deploy it as well from the Azure Marketplace, from the AWS Marketplace. So lots of different ways you can do it. You can deploy us as SaaS, but the neat thing about SaaS is, of course, it's actually based on our next generation platform, which has a lot of distinct advantages in how we build and deploy our core platform. So if you go to turbonomic.com/releases, you can find out exactly what the latest, we have what we call our slow ring or the quarterly release. And this is where we have, some often call it the stable release. It's a common phrase in software. They're all stable, but this is just one where if you're looking to sort of hang back and you're not looking for the latest and newest features, you'll get a quarterly update, which has been sort of widely tested and widely utilized. And often this aligns with our training and other features and resources that you're going to find on the Turbonomic website. Then we have our latest release, which is what we call our public preview. So the public preview means that effectively you're able to download this. It's available to everybody. And in fact, sometimes there are core components inside which are participating in what we call our private preview. So anyways, enough about the rings of release. But if you go to turbonomic.com/releases, you'll always be able to get both the classic, sort of the slow ring release, as well as the fast ring. And you also get a link to our documentation, which is important. We'll actually play this out here. So I'm doing this while I'm on a second monitor. So it's always funny when you're looking at the camera and the monitor's to your left. Now, what I wanted to walk through today is actually doing a deployment of Turbonomic, a 7 release on a VMware platform. So this is a very common architecture for us to deploy into. And like I said, the reason why this is really, really fantastic for us is that rather than being, one monolithic application, all of the inner workings of Turbonomic are a completely microservices-based containerized architecture. We run our own internal distribution of Kubernetes, so it's completely self-managing. And in fact, if you saw in one of our recent turbos, we talked about Turbo on Turbonomic Labs. So you're going to generally see a lot more content, especially in the coming weeks, around this next generation platform for Turbonomic. So with that, it's on. Let's get started. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to walk you through. So if you go to the Explore the Docs link here, or you just go to docs.turbonomic.com, you can always get, we have our classic release information here. So the 6X release, as well as different streams of the 7 release. And this is as they've come through continuous development in our public preview and our private preview process, that there are sort of cut points at which there's more significant changes. So the current stream is what we call 7.22. And this is just a handy way for you to track what version you're running. And we have all of our release notes, all of the API changes. There is a ton of incredible development that's going on in this platform. So you want to make sure you sort of keep up. And again, if you want to think about deploying, you can maintain your existing classic license and run a side-by-side installation of Turbo in our next generation platform. And in fact, that's what we recommend, because underneath the covers, it's a fundamentally different both platform architecture as well as data structure. And as a result, what you're going to want to do is actually deploy. And then what we'll have, and I think maybe we'll try to even do it next week, is show you how to actually do we've got a migration tool to help carry your policies and groups and targets over from one instance to the other. But you run these in parallel for a period of time. We generally recommend about 30 days. And then at that point, you're able to cut over everything else. So it's a very simple process of doing a parallel deployment. And if you wanted to see, you could actually, the best thing you could do is actually start this process today. So you can follow along with what we've got. I'll even tell you to pause at certain moments because there's some typing to do. And then from there, you're able to now go in and then run this side-by-side installation. And then when you're ready to cut over, you've already been running your live instance for a while. So it's fully covered in your license, which is pretty cool. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to grab on to the 722. So you can see down here, we've got the online installation guide. So this interactive walkthrough. You can actually download a PDF as well. So I've already popped that one open. So this is 722.7, which is a fresh new release, which actually just came out on Friday, the 21st, whatever Friday was. Sorry, I'm looking at my phone right now. Now, the first place we want to go is I'm going to assume that you've got some administrative access to your vSphere environment. There's kind of a lot of content, and that's why I wanted to do this live to show you it's actually super easy. Sometimes it's daunting when you're looking through the documentation. Now, here's the cool thing. If you've ever had to deploy any operations management tools, especially some of the core VMware platforms and some of the Microsoft like SECM or like VROPS, like I said, or other products that are in that space, you generally have about an 85-page architecture guide and a sizing guide. This is the amazing thing. Here's your sizing guide. I could literally fit it on this poker chip. That's the sizing guide for Turbonomic in our next generation architecture. Just deploy it. That's it. It's massively scalable, and internally it scales. So that means that there's lots of ways that you can scale it outwards and upwards as you continue to operate and run your environment. So you don't need to have multiple instances and aggregate them together, as we sometimes had in extremely large environments in the past. Literally goes away. Like I said, where else can you fit your instructions for architecture? On a poker chip. Just say, it's on, I'm going to deploy. So it's an interactive PDF. You can click on the link. And we've seen here that there's talks about the minimum requirements for it. It is a decently sized environment. So you want to make sure that you do actually have our out-of-the-box default is for 128 gigabytes. You can run with a 64 gigabytes of RAM. We just want to make sure that there's lots of headspace inside there because we're running our own containerized architecture, and then it will scale. And in fact, as we talked about with Turbo on Turbo, it'll tell you when you need to scale your internal architecture, which is pretty amazing. Okay, so the next piece, we're going to go to the download. So you've already done that. You go to the releases page. You can either download the slow ring release or the latest release, so our latest public preview. And then it's going to get a large OVA file that we're going to get. So you jump over into vCenter, and we're going to do the deploy. So actually, I figured the best thing we could do, let's actually do this live. So I'm going to jump. I've got my vSphere in this case. I think I'm 6.7 Works for, of course, everything up to the latest and greatest. So if you're running 7x release of vCenter and VMware, you're good to go. Also, if you're running VMware Cloud on AWS, we're doing a ton of really cool stuff there. So what I'm going to do is I'll just walk through the process just so you know literally how easy it is. So we're in this case, I'm going to say new. You would normally do a deploy OVF. I've actually got it in my catalog. So I'm just going to walk you through deploy from template, because I just want to show you the quick steps in order to do the setup. So in this case, I've got 722.7. Sorry, it's a bit of an eye chart there. We're going to call it not deployed because I'm actually not going to deploy this one, but it's just for the purposes of doing the walkthrough in the wizard. You choose your compute resources. So it's going to choose your data center, your cluster. It's going to compute for a second, figure out what's going on inside. So that's just native vCenter stuff. There's also ways to do some more sort of aggressive auto deployments and scripted deployments. Luckily, it's not a regular thing for you to do this, so I don't mind doing it manually. Which is funny. I hate manual tasks as much as anybody. Okay, so it tells you the details. It's a reasonable sized disk, so you do have to make sure you've got. You can run as thin provisioning. The total thick provisioning side will be 1.2 terabytes. It's a because it has a complete distributed file system that's packaged within it, which is pretty cool. So of course, follow and fully read your end user license agreement. Once you're good with that, you say accept. We go ahead, we say next. You choose your data store. I don't want to have my good friend Leo, who manages our entire lab environment, chase me down. So I'm going to go thin provisioning so I don't blow up our storage. So compatibility check, everything cool. You choose your VM network. So this is the front end face of your IP address network that you're going to have. We say next, and there it is. So we've got all of our configurations. If I were to say finish, like I said, I don't need to because I've already done a bit of the Martha Stewart pre-baked oven. You don't really want to watch this part live because it takes like 7 minutes to do the OVA deployment. All right, so let's move on to the next one. So imagine that we've gone through that first step, and now we've got our, in this case, I've called it my vanilla instance because it is already set up. I've got an IP address. I'm getting it pulled from DHCP. This is an interesting note. You do require a static IP address for your Turbonomic ARM platform. And this is for a couple of reasons. One, just general consistency. While running in DHCP is possible if you have a static assignment, if there's any changes that do happen, there are internal architectures because we're running a fully containerized deployment. We have to be able to have a consistent endpoint, which actually effectively is proxying. So your Kubernetes implementation, which is running under the covers, that you actually don't need to care so much about it. We do need to set the static IP address. So I'll show you how to do that in a second. So we're going to grab, we know what our IP address is. Let's just pop open. We'll use the web console. Okay, so here is the process. Now this is actually contained, as I said, if you go to the documentation page, so we've done our deployment. Now we're at the power on the VM stage. We can go in, we can launch remote console. Look at that, we're way ahead of ourselves already. And there's two processes that we want to begin first. One, we're going to log in as Turbo. Always log in as Turbo. While you may have the understanding that you do have the root credentials, you should always do everything as Turbo and use SU or sudo in order to perform any tasks. We very clearly document this in there, and it's just generally a better practice. So we're going to log in as Turbo, which has a default password of VM Turbo, and the moment you log in, it's going to prompt you to change the password. So we say Turbo, VM Turbo, old school for folks that have been with us for a while. All right, so current password, VM Turbo, new password. I'm not going to tell you the new password. That's a secret. Type it twice, hopefully the same way. Whammo. Okay, cool. So step one, we've now secured our Turbo account and keep that in a password vault or wherever is the safest place for you and your team to make sure you have shared credentials. And because there is it's not an easy thing to actually try and unpack now. Now, luckily, we do have root credentials. So let's go back, double check our documentation. It tells you, okay, you've got this. Well, now what you want to do is you have to update the root password. It also has a default password that requires you to change it immediately. So we're going to switch back. We're going to say SU dash. So it's going to basically pop open a second session using my super user credentials. Okay, so I'm going to type in VM Turbo. Same thing. You'll notice it says you're required to change your password, which is a general best practice in security. And so we're going to type in our new one. Oh, sorry. Type in the old one first. I almost always make that mistake somewhere, and then I have to type everything over again. Your new one, complex password. It will stop you if you do not use a complex password. It does general dictionary checks and such. Okay, good stuff. So we're set. Now what we've done is we've changed that password. We can exit out of that super user session because we want to be back. We want to be running as Turbo. So in fact, yeah, I can't zoom in, unfortunately, because of the way that the monitor works. But we're good to go. Okay, so now we've done our next. Let's go back to our docs and double check where we are. So you can see it actually goes really fast if you do this. I do it a lot, so it becomes much easier because I run the same like 7 steps over and over again. So we've saved our credentials. I've got them held somewhere. We can get out of there. Now the next thing we need to do is set our network up. There's different folks will try different methods by which to do this. In this case, we're actually going to use the NMTUI, which is a very simple sort of GUI style. It's a command line GUI. So let's just double check. Yeah, it says sudo. So because we need super user credentials, so I'm going to say sudo NMTUI. It's going to pop open. We're going to want to edit a connection. We know we've got a live one, so it actually shows here. It's ETH0. So we just go ahead and hit enter. Now the fun part is you're going to change this. So we're going to set it's set to automatic right now. So the IPv4 we're going to set as manual. Let's expand that here. So you got to do a bit of tabbing and navigation around if you've ever used this platform. Look, you can also set it through like IP ADDR. You can manually set stuff like your DNS servers in resolve.conf. But ideally, for a lot of folks, this is kind of the best way for them to administer it. Okay, so the IP address, which I remembered and I wrote it down, is 10.16.173.12/23. Now you put it in CIDR format, so you want to make sure that we're not using dotted decimal and then a subnet mask. So you're going to do the slash for your subnet. Okay, you need your gateway, which again, I'm not going to make you do the math on this one, but as you can tell by the /23, it could be anywhere. So luckily it's 172.1. Private subnet, so don't worry, you can't hack systems. DNS servers, so I've got internal DNS servers, 16.150.2. Oops. You're going to put a couple in there. Always put a backup. Okay, now this is literally the only requirements you have. There are more if you're setting a proxy. There's a bit more care and feeding, and it's actually clearly documented in the PDF for the install guide. I've got a fairly easy configuration, so I'm just going to go ahead and say OK to get out of there. Now we have to, just like every Unix screen, not designed for usability, we go back. And now I'm going to say quit. So you've set the configuration. However, you're actually still running using your existing live configuration. We have to now turn that on. The best way to do it is to make sure it's going to work. So you do a system. Oops. Oh, look at that. That's what happens. Always happens when you're doing a live demo. The whole thing goes sideways. Let's just see what's happened here. Have I lost my connection? Okay, let's see if we got back there. All righty. Okay, we're back. So we do system CTL, restart, network. So we're going to restart the network stack. It's going to ask you for credentials because I didn't do a sudo. So I type in my new nifty secure password, hopefully correctly. Yes, there we go. Okay, so I've restarted my network. I can do an IP address list. I'll even say ETH0 because you may have a couple of other ones. So I've got my static IP address. We're good to go. Alrighty, check. We found our releases. We've checked our documentation. We deployed the OVA. We've set the password and we set the network. Okay, let's pop back to our documentation and see how far. Now, if you read through the guide, sometimes these things are a bit, they look a little bit onerous. So I walk you through exactly what the steps were to configure this, setting your gateway, setting your DNS server. So we know we're good to go. In fact, let's do one quick thing here. Make sure we ping our gateway. 10.16.172.1. Okay, so I'm actually able to ping my gateway. Life is good. So now the next piece here, if you've got proxies, like I said, there's a proxy section, which is optional. We're not going to go through that because I actually don't have a proxy to use, but there's a couple of spots in some manual config files, especially for the kube spray. If you're going to be, this is required for our Kubernetes to be able to reach the internet to pull down new Docker containers, which will contain the images for you. So we've got a couple of different spots. We also have SSO. So in the YAML file, which is actually for our Helm chart, it will have all you need to configure your SSO. And again, easy click out in the documentation. Okay, so even in like brutally explaining every step of the way, we're 20 minutes in and we're set. We're ready to go. So now the next piece is we're going to go ahead, and in this case, I'm going to start it from the console. Oops. But we just run a configuration script. So this is a script that you do not want to run. So don't use sudo. So you're just going to run it. That's why you have to log in as Turbo for your account. And it takes about 20 minutes for it to run. So let's just kick things off. Don't worry, I'm not going to make you stick with me for 20 minutes. We're going to jump right into the next stage in an active instance. Okay, so we're going to open our, oops, look at that. We already had our web console. Okay, that's clear. Okay, let's double check. Remember what our, so it is OPT local bin THC. Okay, so we can do we can do a shell or a dot opt local bin thc.sh. Alrighty, and it begins. Now we've begun the process. And by doing this now, we're actually doing a completely packaged installation. So it's all self-managing. Lots of goodies are going to be happening. It takes about 20 minutes to go from end to end. And we can actually do a check once we're further along. But let's actually get out of that one because we don't need to see that anymore. We want to get more to one that's a little bit more active. So now what we can do is you'll actually see, in this case, a lot of stuff will come up on the console once you've got an active instance. So pardon if you see a lot of stuff that's flying by while we're doing this here. So you do a kubectl get pods -n turbonomic. And this will be the way that you tell. This again is in the guide. So in this, you'll see all of the containers will be 1 out of 1. They'll be set as running. You'll have a duration. So like I said, after about 20 minutes, you'll see this. We actually have a resource guide, which is going to be on a blog probably by the time you, if you watch this on a replay. Hopefully the blog will be up. And it shows you exactly how to do this, very quickly steps. And I've got a 5-minute version in video of the 4 steps you got to run, or 5 steps. So let's go back to our documentation again to double check where they are. So there we go. So it says we want to run the script. Takes about 20 minutes. We view this. So we do a kubectl get pods -n turbonomic. So setting the namespace. So it'll show you status running. And of course, for setting your system clock, make sure that you double check if you've got anything that you want for synchronizing, because you want it to align with your external time sync. It will pull it right from the local virtual machine in VMware. But if you're running on Kubernetes, then you make sure you have to be able to sync up externally. Then there's a few more things around setting up mediation, but ultimately, a lot of your out-of-the-box configuration is ready to go. So you want to wait until it's started up, and then you're going to go to the IP address of your instance. Again, let's just go into the Martha Stewart pre-baked oven, and we'll go to the one that's already further along. So this was my turbo here, so it's .173.96. And oh, look at that, already on there. This is my my instance. You can see here when we zoom in, it is 7.22.6. So in fact, this is one revision behind from the fast release cycle. I've already done the first wizard. So I apologize. I realized I should have had one that was set at the install wizard, but my username that I chose was administrator. And then I've gone ahead and I've already added a couple of targets, but just not a lot of activity going on because I haven't got APM. So there's certain things that I don't have. But on-prem, so I've got a vSphere target. So I've got a small vCenter environment, and I've got a cloud configuration. So you can see if you actually took the effort time involved in deploying this, it's around 10 to 15 minutes. No architecture required, right? So you don't need to spend days figuring out how to size it. You don't need to check the number of virtual machines you've got. You just deploy it. And this is what we've worked so hard as an organization, especially on our engineering team, which there is so much cool stuff that's going on. We've got a lot of fantastic engineers, and they've been able to create this very simple way in order to remove the complexity from the deployment and then carry forward this scalability. So because, of course, it's running Kubernetes internally, you now have the ability to scale dynamically as needed. And because our application is able to survive pod restarts, etc. So all the different little modules can be updated, managed separately, and they just simply restart and respawn those pods. So it's much more resilient, which is great. It's much more performant, and it's also completely scalable. And you'll hear very soon, like I said, watch the wire. Some neat news that is coming down the pike very quickly. So we've got some stuff that's coming up in the tail end of August, which is if you're watching us live, or in the start of September. So again, go to the Turbonomic blog and keep your eyes on stuff that's going on there. So we've done the deployment, and then from that point on, you have a live instance. If you want to do the migration, I urge you, don't do new target setups. We'll walk through that. But truthfully, a lot of environments, it's just a matter of setting up your targets and pointing at it. And you want to run in parallel. And then what will happen is that if you've got a lot of automation policies that are in place, then we will do the migration to port some of those over. But from that point on, then you say, okay, I've got a good observation period, usually about 30 days worth of historical data that we'd like to pull in, because it gets a good sense of some peaks and averages. It does work literally. If you deploy right now, by the time you hit the end of an hour, you're going to see active actions that are coming up, whether it's a cloud or whether it's on-prem. So it is already working on your behalf, and that's the beauty part. So you're going to see actions that are automatically showing up. The only difference is they get a little bit more tightly tuned as time goes on. So if you're a brand new user, this is your brand new user experience. And I hope that this is helpful if you do want to deploy as a parallel deployment. Like I said, hang tight if you want to do if you've got a lot of groups and policies to migrate. We've got a migration tool that I'm going to do in another episode. So stay tuned for that. And of course, follow the Turbonomic Labs site if you want to follow us wherever you are. If you're watching from YouTube, of course, you can click on the subscribe. You'll get notified as well. If you click the little bell icon, it'll tell you what's going on. So make sure you keep in tune. If you're watching on Periscope, that's another great way where you can get more information about different Turbo Tuesdays that are going on, as well as Turbonomic Thursdays. So we've got a lot of great open tech content, which is happening on Thursdays. Last time around, we deployed a static Jekyll website using AWS Amplify. So go to turbonomic.com/labs, hit the old office hours link there, and it'll take you to, we're going to put up our schedule. So we're going to try and keep that updated. And of course, when in doubt, you can always find me. That's me there. You can always follow me on Twitter and hook up with me on LinkedIn. Always happy to get connected with folks and do what I can to help. And of course, this is a throwback to our old, we were talking containers long before it was cool. I believe that this was our VMworld shirt from about 4 years ago. So pretty much at the dawn of containerization, Turbo's been there, which tells you about our both commitment as upstream contributors to Kubernetes, to Docker itself, to lots of open ecosystems. I'm incredibly proud of the team that I'm a part of and what we're doing to both grow the open ecosystems as well as to make sure that we can bring our application resource management platform to be able to best assure performance and optimize all of those environments. So we'll do another episode as well. If you're running, this is the last thing before we go, one more thing. If you're running Kubernetes and you want to deploy Turbo as a Kubernetes app, you can do that. We've packaged a virtual machine. In this case, this is why this is sort of a VMware specific implementation, but you don't need to have VMware in order to run Turbo. In fact, we've got a lot of customers that are running us either directly as our SaaS offering. So you can sign up for a SaaS, you can run it for any of your cloud architectures. And then the alternative as well is if you're running Kubernetes on-prem or manage Kubernetes in the cloud, then you can simply deploy us as a Kubernetes implementation. So we will sit on top of your Kubernetes and, ironically enough, manage the Kubernetes infrastructure itself. So it's a very interesting use case that we've seen play out, especially some of the larger and more sort of cloud aggressive customers who are really looking to stay strong on containers and look towards the next generation. They want to get away from the legacy virtualization. Well, this is a great way for them to run. So you can run Turbo as a Kube app. Life is good. And then it is literally a one-line deployment. So that's another one. Upgrading your Turbo app. You go in, you open one YAML file, you change one version number, and then you do a redeploy. So you simply just apply the Helm chart, and it pulls down all of the latest images, reattaches all of your existing targets. It's amazing. So I hope that you find this helpful. And of course, anybody that is looking to connect more, as I said, subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can find out what's going on. Catch up with us on Twitter. So make sure you follow the Turbonomic. We're hiding it all under the handle. I don't want to manage 80 different Twitter handles. And of course, stay tuned. Come on back on Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern time where you can watch Turbo Thursdays. And we'll see you at the next Turbonomic Labs.